Hi everyone, Savannah here, and today we're going to be drawing this pumpkin patch. Everything you need to follow along is linked in the description down below, so let's go ahead and jump right in. The very first thing we're going to do is change that background color. So click into layers, click background layer, and we're actually going to do a lighter color here. I started with this darker blue cyan color, but realized I wanted to go lighter. So you can go ahead and click into the lighter one right now if you want to. That's what I'm doing here. And then you also want to create a new layer, and we will start working on the mountains in the background here. So we're going to be going from that medium tone blue to the darker blue. So the further mountains here that you see that go up higher in the horizon, that's going to be that medium blue color. And then the lower mountain here is going to be that darker cyan color. Now I am using the circle brush for this. You can also use the square brush. You can also use the blend variants of those as well. Just know that the blend brushes are pressure sensitive, and so you'll have to press a little bit harder to get more of that pigment in. But for now, I'm just using the circle brush for this and just coloring in the mountains, and then I'll create a new layer above this middle toned layer and do the darker mountains here next. Now I do turn the outline layer just to check the mountains here, make sure they're looking good before I move on. The next thing that we're going to be doing is working on the base layer for the ground. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a new layer. I'm still using this cyan color here that we have for that last mountain because I want to bring that down into the ground a little bit. And then I'm going to grab a lighter orange color, that circle blend brush, and just start adding that in that area. Now, if you look at the horizon, things are a lot more muted as you look further out, and so we're going to try and mimic that a little bit. We're going to have less detail as well, so the further out you look in that horizon, the less details you see, and so we're just going to give the illusion that there are pumpkins there, but we're not going to go super heavy-handed with the details. We're going to have more of those details in the front pumpkins, as you can see in the image in the bottom left, versus further out. We're just going to kind of blend these colors, so I'm just going to be grabbing in some of those colors towards the back there, but right now I'm just kind of laying the groundwork for this. So I'm starting with this orange here. I'm adding in the outline for this, and then we will build up the pumpkins from here. And I am using the circle brush for this to add the orange in. I'm not using the blend brush because I want a lot of that orange pigment to be the base layer for these sections because I want it to look like there are a ton of pumpkins in this field. So that's why I'm doing the orange here, and then we'll build up with some of the other colors that you see in that image. So the greens will build up and define the shapes of some of these pumpkins here as well. And then we'll also work on the ground where the pumpkins aren't laying. We'll build that up as well. And I am doing this all on that same layer that we used, that almost yellowish orange color, and that same cyan color that we brought down from the mountain as well. Now let's go ahead and set this layer to alpha lock, and we're going to grab that yellowy orange color again. We're going to bring that over top of the orange that we just added. So I am using the circle blend brush for this because I want to blend this in with that orange. Like I mentioned, I want that orange to be kind of that base color, that base layer, and so I still want a lot of that orange to peek through, but I'm just going to go over it with this lighter yellowy orange color again, because the further out you look into the horizon, the more muted colors are going to be. So I'm going in with this kind of more muted orange color and blending that downwards into the brighter orange color here that we have for the pumpkins. And because I am using a pressure sensitive brush, I can decide how much or little I want of this color. So you'll see I'm kind of going very lightly as I get further towards where you would be kind of standing in the scene, and I go heavier towards the mountain area. So you can play around with the pressure of this brush, but I'm just kind of going in lightly with that, and then I'll just kind of build up these layers as well. And then I did just want to blend this out a little bit more with the mountain. I kind of want it to be a little fuzzy on where the field ends and where the mountain begins. And so that's why I'm just kind of blurring this out a little bit. And a lot of this image is just going to be building up these colors. So I'm grabbing that orange color, I'm adding that to this lighter orange that we added, the yellowy orange color that we added, and we're just going to keep building up these layers one by one as we're adding in the pumpkins and the details. And now I'm going to grab this dark reddish orange color. I'm going to use that to define the bottom of the pumpkin. So I'm going darker with the bottom because if we're trying to see where this light source is coming from, I'm just thinking it's directly overhead the pumpkins here. It's going to be darker on the bottom of the pumpkin. So I'm using this color, still using that circle blend brush to define the shapes of the pumpkins here. I'm just very loosely doing this. Again, we will build up the layers, so don't worry about it not looking perfect. We will add in more layers to this to make them look a little bit more like pumpkins, but for now I'm just kind of adding in placeholder spots of where I want that definition to be for the pumpkins. And you'll notice I am doing a lot more in the front. I am still taking a little bit of that dark color towards the back as it's kind of fading off into the distance, just to bring a little bit of darkness there, but I'm not clustering them as closely as I am in the ones in the front. Now I have most of them where I want. We could decide to add more later if you want to, but for now I'm going to grab that lighter orange color again, that light orange yellowish color, and I'm now going to do the same thing we just did, but now on the top. So again, that light source is going to be hitting the tops of the pumpkins here, so they'll be much lighter on top. So I'm going to do the same thing, and then we'll grab that mid-tone orange to bring those two colors down and blend it a little bit more, but I'm just kind of placing the tops of the pumpkins now, similar to what we did with the bottoms. And then I'm just going to very loosely add in some of that color to the non-pumpkin areas that we added. So where we didn't place this darker pumpkin, I'm just kind of giving the illusion that there might be more pumpkins in these areas by using that color to do the tops of pumpkins that are further out in that distance. And I'll grab that medium orange color and we're going to just go in the center of these pumpkins and blend these colors out. You can go a little bit heavier with the blending if you want to, or go a little bit lighter if you want to have more of that lighter and darker color to pull through. But I'm just going to go through, blend these colors out a little bit. Again, we can still keep adding in details, building these layers up, but I'm just going to blend these colors together. And I am doing this all on that same layer. So I'm not doing multiple layers. you can if you want to, but all of the pumpkin field here is on one layer. It's just easier. There's not many colors. There's quite a few different pumpkins, but it's not that hard to blend these in for me. But if you want to do these on different layers, then you absolutely can do that. And now I'm going to go back through with that dark red orange color and bring some of those areas up into the pumpkin where they have the lines kind of separating, where those areas that protrude out of the pumpkin, I'm going to kind of give those more definition here. And I'm going to do more definition at the pumpkins in the front versus in the back. I'm just kind of very loosely adding in definition. I'm not too worried about them being too detailed because, again, the further out you look, the less detail you have. And so I'm just very, very lightly adding a little bit of detail or bringing a little bit more darkness in if I lost that a little bit by adding too much of that mid-tone orange. And then same thing with the lighter orange color. If you've lost a little bit and you want to bring more light color in, this is time you can just go back through and add that back in. Again, this is building up a lot of layers. I tend to do that a lot. I might do it a little too much, but if you're happy with how yours is looking and move on to the next step, I just like to kind of go back and forth and play with it because every time I go through a pass, it looks different than the previous versions that I've done. And so I'll just keep kind of doing this until it starts looking how I want it to look or how I envisioned this field to look. And now that we have these pumpkins pretty much done, we still have the greenery to add as well, but I'm going to work on the area where the pumpkins are not it's kind of sitting. So I'm going to grab a new layer for this. I'm grabbing, it's also called orange, but it's a little bit more of a brownish orange color. And I'm grabbing that circle brush. I'm going to fill in the ground here in between where these pumpkins are. And now that's filled in, I'm going to start grabbing in some of these other colors here. So we have a lot to pick from. I'm grabbing the green that's in the bottom left of that color palette. Using that circle blend brush, I'm going to go around the edges first here where the pumpkins kind of go up against, and then I'm going to drag it across the surface. Now, because this is a pressure sensitive brush, I can mess around with how much or little I want this color to pop through. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here. Feel free to play around with it. As you can see in the picture in the bottom left, I use a lot of colors for this area just to kind of bring a little bit more variation to it than just all these pumpkins, all this orange. And so have fun with the colors. There's a lot to choose from, and I'll show you kind of what I do here to build it up to look like that in the bottom left. But right now I'm just going to start with this green and add in some spots here and there across the surface here. Next, I'm going to grab a little bit more of like an olivey green color. I'm going to change the brush size of this just to kind of play around with the different sizes as well. So feel free to do that. And the same thing, I'm just kind of going across the surface. I'm doing all of my lines horizontally for the ground. I don't want to go vertical because I want that horizontal look for the ground here to go mirror with the mountains. Everything's kind of horizontal up, in this image. And so I want to kind of mirror that a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just going to keep building up colors here. We have different greens, we have oranges, we have, lighter tannish colors, browns. So I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, building up different areas. If I, go too far one direction or the other, then I'll tone it down or brighten it or light and darken it. But just keep playing with these colors and we're going to keep building up this section. Now I'm going to grab that dark grayish yellow green color and I'm going to go and add some of that here. I'm going to add it to the front, just give it some more color variation. I'm going around the edge where the pumpkins are because I want to darken that a little bit. And then I'm going to just add a little bit of, not like squiggly lines, but just a little bit of difference. So it's not just all horizontal lines, so a little horizontal but squiggly-ish, I guess is how you would say it. But I'm just going to do that, especially in the front area here where we're going to add just a little bit more detail. You don't have to go all the way through this entire section towards the back because again, you have less details the further back you go. So I'm just adding it mostly to the front, and I'm pulling in a lot of these different colors. So like I mentioned, I'm pulling in browns, I'm pulling in different shades of green, different shades of tan and orange. And so just keep playing with these colors, keep building up these sections until it's looking how you want it to look for this area. Now I'm happy with how this is looking. I'm going to start working on the dark green that we have with the pumpkins, and specifically around the edge where the pumpkins are kind of overlaid on the ground here. I'm grabbing the circle brush. I create a new layer right above the pumpkin layer. I'm going to start adding the green here. Now I apologize for this. My hand's a little bit more over top of the image, so you're not going to be able to see it too well right here, but I'm just adding in this green towards the edge, in these kind of squiggly lines here. Now you can see a little bit, but in these kind of squiggly lines to give the illusion of this greenery that is kind of coming out within this pumpkin patch. So I'm just adding that in around the edges here. And now I'm going to start adding it in between the pumpkins. So I do want to add in some greenery. It's not just all orange here in this pumpkin patch. There is going to be some green. So I'm going to start placing that here and there throughout this image. And then we will start working on adding some color variation to this as well. So it's not going to be just this dark green. So don't worry, it's not going to look like this. As you can see in the image in the bottom left, it's not as dark as what it looks like there. So we're just kind of using this to place the coloring, and I usually like to do dark if I have a lighter color background, or lighter area that I'm doing this over, so I could really see the different sections. Similarly, if it was darker pumpkins, I would go lighter with the color so I can see kind of that distinction. But we are going to add some more color variation to this, so again, don't worry about it. We're just placing where we want the plants to go, and I'm just using the darker color for now. And I went kind of heavy with the greenery here. You don't have to go as green. If you want it more orange, you can. But again, we are toning this down. It's not going to be this dark of green. It's not going to be as stark in some areas. But I wanted to add a lot of greenery. I just wanted to give it some more, um, you know, interest to this piece. And so it's not just all orange. I just want a lot of different color variations, so your eyes kind of looking around instead of just drawn to just the pumpkins. But it also helps kind of the pumpkin stand out because there's not so much orange, that when you do see the orange, it really stands out against the greenery that we have, or this blue green coloring that we have here in the image. And I am bringing some of that greenery out into the ground here, just to kind of blend it in a little bit more with the ground, so it doesn't just look like it's sitting on top of the ground. I want it to blend. I want it to look like this pumpkin patch has been growing quite a long time here in this section because there's so many pumpkins. And this is also where I'm looking and seeing, do I need to add more pumpkins? So right here, it just felt very empty. So I'm adding a pumpkin here. If you have a pumpkin here or you don't want one there, that's fine. You can move on. But this is where I'm just kind of looking as I'm adding in the greenery and seeing, do I want to add any more pumpkins? Do I want to add this or that? Or do I want to remove any pumpkins? I'm kind of tweaking it right now as we kind of build this image out. Now I'm happy with that. I'm going to go back to that green layer. I'm going to make sure that it's set to alpha lock, and I'm going to grab a different green color with that circle blend brush. I'm just going to add some variation here. Now, like I mentioned, we don't want it to be this dark. We want it to be lightened. So I'm going to add in a lighter colors here and there and then blend even lighter colors. So you see I'm going lighter towards the back because again, further out you go, the more muted these colors are. So I'm going lighter and more muted with those greens further back, but I'm going to be adding in some of this green in the front to give it some color variation. I'm going a little bit darker in the front and then of course lighter towards the back, but with that circle blend brush, as you can see here, I'm able to mess around with the pressure sensitivity here and add in more or less of this color that I have in the area. If I want it to be a little bit darker, I'll do a little bit less press on that, or if I want it to be brighter, I'll go a little bit brighter, but I'm just going to add in a lot of different green tones here to give it a lot of character, a lot of definition, without having to do too much detail work, right? And so we're adding in a lot of different colors here because that's going to give illusion. There's a lot of different plants here. There's shade, there's highlights, all that is kind of being pulled through here by adding in multiple different colors without having to do too many details. And feel free to use any of the greens that I have in the color palette. I'm using a lot of these blue greens, but I'm also going to pull in some more of those yellow greens as well. There's quite a few, so you can kind of go any tint that you want to. If you don't want to go quite as blue as I'm doing here, you can do more of the yellowy greens, but have fun with it. Pull in any colors. You don't have to copy me exactly unless you want to. That's absolutely fine. But like I mentioned, there's a lot of greens that you can pull in to give these plants a little bit more life. Now, one thing I'm going to do to blend in the green with the ground here is I'm grabbing that orange-ish color that we use for the ground, and I'm very lightly along the edge of the greenery here, blending that out. So I'm doing that because I don't want this to be such a harsh line with the ground. I want it to blend in as if that, plant is kind of growing out into the ground here. And so that's what I'm kind of doing here. Just very lightly blending this out. We're still using that circle blend brush, but now it's looking a little bit better. It's not looking quite as harsh against the ground here. And that's looking much better to me. Like I said, I didn't like that it was such a harsh line. Now you can definitely keep it a harsh line if you want to, but for me, I just wanted to be a little bit softer and wanted it to blend in more with that ground. And I'm just going over with a little bit more green to blend it out even more, because going up with a little bit of that almost brownish tan color lost a little bit of that green around the edges. So I'm just very lightly going over some of those sections with this green again to bring it out a little bit more, but without having it be such a hard line that we had before. And now I am going to do the same thing against the pumpkin, so I don't want it to be such a hard line against the pumpkin. So I'm grabbing the medium orange color. You don't have to do the dark one. You can use the medium orange because that's kind of pulled throughout all of these sections. But I'm just going to very lightly go over some of the edges here of the greenery to blend it out a little bit more with the pumpkins as well. I'm mainly just wanting to blend this out because I want to give this image a very soft feel to it, and it's very hard with those green lines against the pumpkins here, and so I want to soften it up a little bit, and one way to do that is to soften the edges of the greenery that we've added, and so I'm doing that with the orange here. I'm also grabbing in a lighter orange because as you go further into the horizon, it's much lighter, and so I want to also use that lighter orange against the green, but that's what I'm kind of doing. It's just softening this green up just a little bit so it's not so stark against the pumpkins. And I'm just being mindful of where the greenery is. So as it's further towards the back, I'll use that lighter orange. As it comes more towards the front, I'll use that medium orange. But you can also grab colors from the actual image and not use the color palette. So a lot of these colors have probably blended with others, and so they're not the exact same color from the color palette. So if you want to use a color from the image, just hold your finger down on the color you want for a second or two. It will pull it in the color picker, and then you can use that to blend out if you want to all this greenery. So that could be a better option if you want to do it that way. But I just happen to pull the colors from the color palette because they're close enough to that color and I'm not pressing too hard on them. So it's going to blend out very nicely between that green and the orange that we have already down. And now I'm just going to touch up the edges a little bit. So I'm going to erase a little bit of the greenery. I'm using the soft brush, which is a Procreate standard brush for the erase tool. I'm just very lightly erasing some of the greenery because it was looking like it was overcrowding the pumpkins. And I want the pumpkins to speak for themselves here in this image. I don't want a lot of that greenery. So I'm just erasing a little bit here and there. And because we put that green layer above the pumpkin layer, I went a little too over the pumpkins with that green. So I'm just erasing the edges a little bit to give more of that pumpkin definition. If you erase too much, just tap with two fingers on the screen and that will undo it. But I'm just going to go through and just touch up the edges of the pumpkins here. And then we have stems to add to the pumpkins. And then we'll be pretty much complete with this image here soon. Now I'm happy with how that's looking, but I'm going to do a few more touch-ups with some of the green. So I'm going to go do that real quick, add a few touch-ups here and there. I'm going to do it on the pumpkin layer because it's kind of underneath. So I'm just using that as like a hidden area that I'm adding in some of the detail. The pumpkin layer, I don't have it set to alpha lock, so I'm just adding it directly to that layer. And then we'll add the stems and then we'll be done with the image. Now all we have to do is add stems to some of these pumpkins. Now you don't have to do every single pumpkin, but I'm going to do the majority of the ones in the front. I'm going to do this on a new layer above the greenery layer that we did, and I'm using that yellowish greenish gray color. And again, just placing stems. You can use the square brush for this, you can use a circle brush for this, but I'm going to be placing the stems here and there on these pumpkins. And with that, our drawing is complete. Thank you so much for following along. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what your favorite thing to do is at a pumpkin patch. Is it getting the pumpkins? Is it a corn maze? Or maybe it's eating delicious foods? Either way, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video.